I think of you still as a modernist, I suppose because I knew of you from way back and always thought of you, and you are a modern composer. Now people
I'm a
want...
traitor. Some people consider me as a traitor of modern music. Take my 2 small harpsichord pieces, which are pastiche, or the horn, violin, piano trio, which in fact was considered as a criminal act.
Sort of retro,
Oh,
neo.
yes, super retro. But I'm not in a company of Arvo Pärt and John Adams, and which I feel it's not my... Oh, I like them, but no, I'm trying to do something which is my music, whether you call it retro or postmodern or call it modern, I don't care. And always balancing between the avant-garde nonsense and the neo-tonal modal nonsense, which I think both are worn out.
Yes.
But don't think that I am right. Who can? We have no this criteria of truth is a scientific, is a Popperian criteria and not a... You cannot apply it in art.
Can I just ask you about the horn trio and perhaps a little bit about the violin concerto, which are 2 big works which are going to be broadcast during the week? And I remember the horn trio came at the end of a period for you which had not been very productive. It was after the opera. And
yes,
would you
4
like to say
years gap.
Would you like to say something about what was in your mind when you...
Oh, I work all the time on my piano concerto, but I never finished it because I was lost. Today also I'm lost. Because I belong to the so-called avant-garde, and in late 50s, early 60s, I wrote this cluster, polyphonic cluster pieces, and I believe this is the language. And then already in the early 60s, during the composition of the Requiem, I began to be very skeptical.
You had to change, yes.
Yeah, total chromatism. No, in art, when you use something too often, then... So I don't like the attitude to develop a cliché and repeat it and have a trademark. I try to change after every piece.
Sing a new song.
No, it's more like in science, you know. If you solve the problem, can be mathematics, can be physics or biology or whatever, you develop a certain theory and you try to falsificate it, and it seems that it's valid. And then after solving one problem, you have hundreds of new problems which you didn't know even that they will arise before. So this is the whole history of science happened. So, and I'm very close to the scientific thinking, but I don't want that people should make the mistake to think that you told it. I'm not a scientist. I don't use science. I know a lot about mathematics, but I don't use calculations. I don't use computers. I know how they function because I want to remain in... You know, I don't like to use amplified sounds. I did electronic music, and then I stopped.
So the horn trio, which puzzled so many people.
It has a retro.
They thought, oh my, what's he doing? He's going back to Brahms.
In fact, it's written on it, homage à Brahms, because Brahms wrote this wonderful horn trio. I was asked if you would know the story. Things are always very simple and very complicated at the same time. I was asked by Bonaventura, American conductor, to write 2 concertis, one for his brother, Anthony, piano concerto, which finally I did after 17 years later, and for a horn concerto with Barry Tuckwell was supposed to I had a lot of contact with Barry Tuckwell and was thinking how to write it, and I'm very, very slow. So meantime, Bonaventura told me it will not more be Tuckwell. I was sad. And then, by chance, can I tell the true story? A pianist, I don't tell. Oh, yes, Mr. Besch, quite good pianist in Hamburg. I used to be a teacher at the Hamburg Conservatory of Music. And we were in the loo, pissing at the same time, as gentlemen have a small chat.
Where gentlemen meet, yes.
Yes. And he asked me, he didn't know about my plans for a concerto. And at this moment, it was the early 80s. It was out. Bonaventura didn't want more. Ask Barry Tuckwell what happened. I don't know. And Besch told me he's playing with the best German horn player, who is Hermann Baumann, the Brahms trio, and with an excellent violinist who is Gavrilov. I knew this is also the beginning of the violin concerto. It was then an effect of, this is not music. These are how happens that you write a piece. Of course, you don't write it because it's a commission, but you need a commission, and so on. So Besch told me, would I consider to write a horn trio which can be performed with the Brahms one? And I told him spontaneously I could consider it, because I was thinking on a horn concerto, but the sponsor is not more sponsoring the horn concerto. So, do you have a sponsor for the horn trio? Yes, there will be a Brahms commemoration. I don't know, some 100 years or 200 years, something, 100 years, 125 years, whatever. 124.6, all these stupid jubilees. So I told him, yes, I have a lot of horn idea and I like the instrument and I studied the technique. I cannot play it, but I know how it works. And he told me, so the horn player was wonderful. I never met him, but I knew about him. And the violinist was an old friend, Gavrilov. So I told him yes. And then from Hamburg, industry people, they gave me a commission, but it was a prescribed condition that I use a Brahms theme because it's for the Brahms company. I thought, this I cannot do. I will use a Beethoven theme. And that's it for the Les Adieux Sonata. The
farewell motif, yes.
Farewell motif, which is originally a thinking for two horns, but in Beethoven it's played by the piano, and in my trio begins the violin playing the doubles. So it was kind of ironical, not doing Brahms, but making a bow to this direction. And I thought, Brahms is not one of my favorites. Also, the B-flat major piano trio is a wonderful music, and the two sextets for strings are wonderful music. But it's not a main composer for me. And I thought, so they wanted a Brahms theme or a motif, and I thought, I can use one tone, so whichever, a C. You find it in Brahms. So they didn't like my answer, and then I was asked to write a dedication, homage à Brahms. Then a lot of stupid people thought that it's Brahms in it, but a lot of Beethoven in a fake, and in fact it's a style of it's a game. It's something playing with tradition, but in the wrong direction, I would say. Using for a Beethoven, like the third movement, march, kind of march.
Yes.
Like in the which sonata is
Sonata in A major, 101, that Beethoven?
Yes, exactly, 100, yes,
Mm.
this one. And which I like to play on the piano, these late Beethoven sonatas, doing some allusions, no quotations.
No quotations, but allusions.
But introducing the Steve Reich face-shifting technique in it, and all this kind, it's just irony.
And something in the horn trio derives, doesn't it, from your long-standing interest in different kinds of tunings?
Yes.
With a combination of those three. Would you like to say something about that?
Yes. I was very much tired after this chroma. I believed in total chromaticism in the late 50s and early 60s. I began to have skeptical
doubts.
Yes, and then knowing a bit without listening, just knowing about the middle, you say middle tone, mesotonic, middle tone.
Yes, mean tone.
Mean tone, tuning having possibility of 8 natural major thirds. I never heard them, but I read about it. Oh, and if you want to have genuine Frescobaldi and this, in Bach you cannot do it because it's modulation, but in music without modulation, which is halfway modal, halfway tonal, you can have this. And I began to be bored with the equal temperament. Because it's not beautiful. All these major thirds on the piano are ugly. If once you hear the real ones, you cannot stand. Yes, of course I hear them because I worked in 57, 58 in the electronic music studio in Cologne, and I produced some pure. Oh, we had a lot of studies about Fourier synthesis and analysis, so I produced there a lot of pure natural spectra, so I knew how this sounds. And every violinist making the tuning in natural fifths of the strings, but then they play other fingerings and conflict with the piano and and so on. And then the big, influence, which was like later with Nankaro, but this was early in 72. I was a guest lecturer in Stanford University in California. I heard a lot about Harry Partch, never hearing a sound from it. But I heard in the library of Stanford University. I went there in January 72 without speaking English, and then through my lectures, I began to speak English, like now, bad English, Hungarian English. And then after 2 months, I began to listen things in the library, and it was a Henry Cowell piece based on, I don't know the title, on natural tuning.
Yes.
And I had no knowledge about the book of Henry Cowell, New Musical Resources, I think is the title. It's very famous and very important, and very few people know it. But I didn't read it. I heard about it. This was enough, and I heard that some American original old composer in close to San Diego, Harry Partch, built in all his life a lot of instruments with special tuning. Before, maybe I heard the name, but I didn't know what it was. I decided to visit Harry Partch. I cannot drive a car. To Encinitas, north of San Diego, he lived in the age where I am now, but it's 25 years ago.
Yes.
And by chance, somebody drove me there. And, Harry Partch had no idea. He had no telephone, just even no ringing at the door, just knocking and go inside. He lived there, thanks of Betty Freeman, who is a wonderful mécène and helped a lot of American visual artists and composers.
Yes.
And he had these amazing instruments, a part of them. A part was, then I went to San Diego in the university, and not only that I could see them, I could play on them. And this opened in 10 minutes my ears what you can do with natural harmonics.
Yes.
So I was before already in 68. This was in 72. 68 I wrote this ramification for 2
groups of strings
in quarter tone. But having no knowledge about the existence of the Charles Ives quarter tone pieces for 2 pianos. So this is everything chance.
Yes.
Ives is much better. I heard it later in America in 72. So, but quarter tones or sixtones are boring. Some alternative harmonic thinking is more interesting. From Harry Patch, I got this influence of thinking in natural harmonics, and the horn is the ideal instrument because you can produce high harmonics, and having the joy of the sevenths, of the minor sevenths, and of the tritone, or between tritone and fourth, which is you cannot find it on the piano.
Yes.
And then came my interest in African and Southeastern Asian music, which are somehow close. Gamelan music I knew before. This is not pure intonation. It's something totally different. Even the octaves are never clean. It's a different. Oh, there are so many possibilities of. It's not a question to have a system. The question having 100 different systems or no system at all. There's a Californian composer, I never met him, called Fonville. He wrote for several flutes, very interesting pieces. Or I met him later. And in no tuning system. So it's whatever. And I became very interested in this. So my violin concerto...
Which wouldn't have been written without the experience of the horn trio, perhaps, or not the same way?
Yes, it would... No, it wouldn't be written without. And the fact that Gavrilov played it, we became very good friends, I knew him before, was that by chance he played my horn trio. It was this Besch ideas on the Lou in the Conservatory of Hamburg. It turned out that he told to Gavrilov and to the famous horn player Baumann, who was not interested in modern music, you know, Ligeti will write a trio for us. You play with me Brahms and Ligeti. So it was and so he's a nice person, but it was a tricky thing. Without the horn trio, I would never write the violin concerto. Without the knowledge of the Harry Patch instruments, I would never write the horn trio. And you can go back and back. Without the knowledge of a lot of gamelan music from Java and Bali, I would never have the idea to go out from the system, which I did in the violin concerto.
So the sound has become, in a sense, dirtier, isn't it? A little more...
In a sense, dirtier, in a other sense, closer to natural harmonics. In the violin concerto, I let two instruments in the small orchestra have alternative tuning, and I can produce harmonics. That means the major third and the minor seventh.
Can you just describe how you've done that in the violin concerto? The two instruments being the...
Practically,
yes.
How I do it. It's two string instruments which are different accord, how do you say, intonation,
yes,
are enough.
Yes.
Enough, because they have 5 strings.
It's a violin and a viola, isn't it?
A violin and viola. So I tell the violin, you listen to the F, which is the 7th harmonic on the G string, either of a cello or the double bass. No, usually we take the double bass because I need also the A string, which is an octave lower than the cello. So pretty low string, we can very easily go to... You can do it on the G string of the violin also, but it's octave higher. Play the 7th harmonic and F on the G string, either in cello or in the tuning which you have. Then this will be lower. This 7th. I knew how many cents, but I forgot. I think 31 cents. That means 31% lower than on the piano. In an equal temperament. So it's a total different. But I can, and then another instrument, which is the viola, I tell him, tune down your... Yes, I tuned on one violin the E string slightly higher, but not to F, to this...
To a flat F.
Flat F, which the double bass gave me a seventh harmony. So I have a seventh harmony for 4 different possibilities, having 4 strings then in fifths. And the viola I use for the natural third. That means 2 octaves plus third. That means I ask the viola player, tune down your D string to the C sharp, which is slightly lower, exactly 14 cents. This I know, but when I hear it, I don't calculate in cents. The double bass will give his 5th harmonic on the A string, which is a C sharp, 2 octaves plus major third higher. But this major third is clearly lower than the one on the piano, the temperament, which was useful for modulation in tonal music. But when I forget the modulation in major and minor tonalities, I can use alternate systems because I'm not depending more from equal temperament. So it's very retro, going back to... So in this way, I have 4 possibilities for pure major, but I have much more because I can have the harmonics. For instance, I can have the octave plus the fifths, so I have other 4, and I can even have the very, very much. If this string, this C sharp, is 14 cents, that means 14% lower than the C sharp on the piano, measured from the A, the ground note 8. If I play on this string the 5th harmonic, which is 2 octaves plus a major, I have 28 cents lower. So this doesn't exist in no tuning.
Yes.
So I can produce certain new kind of harmonies which are half dirty and half much cleaner than on the piano. Listening to all this and listening to a lot of gamelan music from especially wonderful chord tradition from solo or this is one of the main. One is Surakarta.
Yes.
In the middle of Java. I never was there, but wonderful music. And the other is Yogyakarta, with slightly different tuning system. And the wonderful word of xylophone and lamellophone tuning in Africa, and pygmy singing, which is in no system is halfway between equal pentatony, equal dividing of the octave. You find it on xylophones, and halfway between natural harmonics. So it's a kind of compromise. But I have endless discussions with Simha Arom, who pretends that this is not true. So we don't go in this special.
No. So please let me.
Yeah.
I mustn't keep you much longer. You must be getting tired, but it's lovely. We can go.
Sorry, I don't think I am tired. I just say.
Yes, fine.
And you, with Alan together, you put together what you want. Sorry that I'm so without.
Not at all.
It's the way how I compose.
Yeah.
No system.
Say that again, please.
This is the way how I compose. No system. But somehow based on systems, but on very different systems.
So the instability of tuning in the violin concerto is a fascinating area for the listener to appreciate, isn't it? It's with those instruments, the ocarinas, the slide whistle,
which are out of tune, of course,
as it were, out of tune,
and the slide whistle,
and it gives that
out of tune.
The concerto a sort of fragility. It sounds dangerous, as if
exactly
something's about going to
and it's
going
a kind
to slip.
of you can say in English iridescence.
Yes.
You know, iridescence, shimmering, which always interested me. Order in the cluster pieces, in Atmosphere in '61, it was the idea of shimmering, static sound shimmering. This is a constant, and one time I did it with moving clusters, chromatic, and much later I did it with this half clean, half dirty. So it's chaos and order. It's also a very fashionable, slogan.
The things come round and go back to your first loves, your first interests, as the phrase is. Somebody said to me, I don't know, it was a composer, and I can't remember who it was, but, we're, all of us are, as it were, all serious composers, born composers, are working in a canvas, and you return to a little corner up there or down there, and it's not exactly going over the same ground, because of course you don't repeat yourself, you've said that, but you're returning to
partially things. I have certain ideas which are always there, but I'm not thinking, I'm just doing. I have colleagues who make elaborate big systems and then, or using calculations, whichever calculations. I appreciate it, but I am very far from this. I have a lot of knowledge of sciences, of mathematics, and of different cultures and so on, visual art, but I don't use it deliberately. I'll use it indirectly, in the way how I speak now.
Yes.
Chaotically.
Why are there so many passacaglias and chaconnes in your music? Sorry, it sounds a rather dumb question, but I'm just interested in, as it were, some inherited forms that have always fascinated you?
Oh, it's chance and education. Many times we spoke about these intricate rhythmic complexities, which is Rankaro and 14th century and Africa. Also, if you ask me about this passacaglia form, is something which goes back to several different influences. You will be very amazed if I tell you spider webs. I was, as a 3-year-old child, very much and I still have a spider phobia, but a fascination for spider webs. And spider webs have repeated patterns, but not totally ordered, because the wind blows and insects are flowing in. So the spider is also working, having a certain program in the nervous system, how to build regular. But the spider webs are not. Have you heard about the interesting experiments in the late 50s in Sweden? Some insect scientists gave drugs for spiders, and I saw the photos in 57 in Darmstadt, somebody came, with drunk spiders who make totally crazy web structures. So, what was the question?
Passacaglias and
Passacaglia, yeah. Having a system which is regular, but destroying this system. In the tradition in England, there is a very strong tradition coming from the summer canon to this.
Summer is a hominin, yes.
Yes, to the ground.
Ground bass?
Yes, to ground bass. You find it everywhere. Maybe it's Celtic tradition. I don't know. We don't know. Think of the wonderful Irish and North England 7th, 8th century Book of Kells and Lindisfarne and all these things. This was here, and it's very similar, this kind of very simple orders, elaborating complexity. If you play a passacaglia or a chaconne, they are similar, very, very elaborate, like the Bach chaconne for violin solo. It's a simply harmonic pattern, which you repeat, but you repeat it always with a different pattern of rhythmical imagination. It's wonderful. Building a huge building from this very simple, which is even always repeated, 8 bars repeated, no difference. This is also in African music. You have cycles, always the same length, but inside is a very rich ornamental. If I go back in poetry to certain fixed forms, like the sonnet, you have certain rules, or haiku in Japanese. You have numbers of syllables, you have to maintain them, but inside you can put every richness. So I think mainly because of my predilection, is this an English word? Predilection, for simple order, but developed in a crazy way, the Pasacalla or chaconne idea is very appealing to me. When I played, on piano with a violinist, what is called La Folia.
Yes.
One of these chaconnes. Did Corelli?
Yes.
Corelli. I was also. It's so simple and it's always different. This is one of the sources. Then I was very fascinated from certain Pasacalla. What is the difference between Pasacalla and chaconne? We leave to the musicologists. If it's more dance, you tell it's chaconne, always in 3, but the Pasacalla also is always 8 times 3. Not always a bass, it can be a harmony, but sometimes the harmony in tonal music is defined by bass. But you find a wonderful Monteverdi, a very simple Zefiro Torna.
Yes.
Oh, it's a 4 times 3 motif. And then you shift it with hemiola structures and becomes very rich. It's modal music, half tonal, half modal. And I liked when I heard this first time. It was the Leopard, all madrigals of which it's a joy.
Yes.
The whole thing. And then I heard from Leopard and also Arnoncourt, very different elaborations of Popea. And the end of Popea, when Nero and Popea sings this very cynical love song where Nero is in love and Popea wants only glory. And it's the same form, repeating, having a ground. And in English music, beginning with the
Summer is a coming in,
and then going through the Elizabethan time, Bird
and so on.
You have a lot of this round ground. Oh, by the way, English culture, deeply impressed by the change ringing. You can hear in St. Paul's and everywhere. When I first heard it, it was an American church in West Berlin. What is this? They permutate the clocks. I had no idea. Later I read books about it. But when I heard first time, and when I knew about it already, going Sunday 10 o'clock to St. Paul's in London, and fascinating, listening a whole hour. This is the same idea, having a simple pattern, then changing it. There is another source of my predilection for Pasacalla forms. Pasacalla is, you have shoes, and you have, what is called in English, what you bound?
Laces.
Laces. In a Pasacalla or chaconne, you have to bound the shoelaces very tightly. So this kind of order, which is not a clockwork, which is a bit not exact, but it's bound, and it's or not system. Therefore, in mathematics, my preferred part of mathematics is topology and the science of different knots, and then my very deep interest for textile patterns, and I share it with Morton Feldman, the love. Only I'm not an expert, and he was an expert. No, but coming back, another thing. In my childhood, I heard Romanian. I couldn't speak Romanian, couldn't understand Romanian. But in Romania, there is a tradition of these women who will sing and will cry when somebody is dead. You have it in different cultures.
Different cultures, yes.
Oh, in many countries, in Asia and Europe. A very strong tradition on the Balkans, in all languages, also in Hungarian, but only in peasant, more simple areas. For instance, Carpathian Mountains, you find Romanian and you find Hungarian. The melodies are very different. But this is not real being sorrow, because they are paid women who...
It's professional sorrow.
Professional sorrow, with real cry, like in cinema. You know, they are actors. Wonderful musical tradition. And in Romania, I heard it as a young boy, and it's called bocet. It's this, in Hungary it's shirato, you have in Serbian and Bulgarian, every country. Maybe also in Ireland, or I don't know.
Yes, certainly, in Celtic cultures.
So everywhere where the certain agronomical tradition still persists, not in London. So I heard this wonderful bocet, which is always a repetition of a pattern, which is more or less always a force. So let's say F going down to C.
Yes. Not
chromatic, but... Oh, I would like to sing one, but I am not prepared, so it will not be accurate. It's microtonal.
Yes.
I can sing it, but not now.
And always descending.
Always descending, repeating, and always a bit different. And you find the same pattern in Andalusia, in the extremely elaborate flamenco cante hondo, very close. Or there are hypotheses why they are similar. Maybe it's gypsy tradition, gypsy migration from northeast India, one going through Turkey, so both Iran, then going Turkey to the Balkans until Ukraine, you find this. And in Romania, it's Romanian, it's not gypsy, but it's so amazing, I cannot prove it, it's hypothesis, why you find it in the cante hondo, this descending, mostly Phrygian ending, Miss minor second, and the other gypsy migration, I don't know when it was, in 14th or 13th century, when the Mughal domination of North India and the lowest castes,
yes,
can be killed, the untouchables, and they had to fly, and
flee, yes.
To how do you say in English?
Flee.
To flee, and came to Europe.
Yes.
And a part went through Iran, Arabian, through the Sinai to Egypt, therefore gypsies, and North Africa and to south of Spain. It's amazing if you listen not only to bocet, listen to kind of Romanian. You find it especially north in the Maramuresh, close to what is Ukraine today, used to be Soviet Union.
Yes.
It's a very, very Romanian musical culture in a very small area in the northern Carpathians, which called hora lunga. Hora lunga, lunga is like long, and hora is a Slavic word, is a dance, but it's not a dance. I could sing it, but I'm now a bit... I cannot do it now in the microphone. Yeah. Hora lunga is absolutely close to cante hondo, and it's Romanian, not gypsy, and it is always on descending patterns, and always certain repeating certain figurations. I applied in my viola sonata, yes, in the first movements, called hora lunga. It's not it's not folklore, but the idea to have certain rhythmic melodic patterns, mostly on pure intonation, and both sung and played on the violin, and amazing that it's the same in Andalusia. There are gypsies singing it. Don't ask me whether this is true or not. I am not an ethnomusicologist. I just say, and you find it in old Galician Jewish klezmer music, the same area, Ukrainian border. What is gypsy and what is not gypsy, we don't know. It's a total melting of cultures.
Pot, yes.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, because I was going to ask
So wait a moment. So my own experience with the Romanian, not Hora Lunga, because this I knew later, but what I heard in this Bocet and the Pasacallas of Monteverde and Purcell. So combined with the idea of spider webs and the repetition of simple patterns in an irregular way. This is the interest for Pasacalla. The last Beethoven sonata, the arietta in
111?
111, yes. There are variations, always being faster and faster. It's the same idea.
Your music has a dying fall, and I think you've now explained why.
A what?
A dying fall?
What is this?
The dying fall is a quotation from what? I'm not sure. But
Explain.
the descending, it gives so often a feeling of lamentation, or...
This comes from for this Romanian and also Hungarian. Hungarian's different tradition of this Shirato in Hungary or the Bocet in Romania. which I knew, I heard it, mourning people, paid women. I don't think that I have a predilection for this kind of falling. I have a lot of melodies which you find everything.
Yes.
Take my piano etudes Escalier du Diable and Colana Infinita, which is, by the way, a Romanian very famous column of Constantin Brâncuș. You say Brancusi here, but he's Brâncuș. Always ascending, not at all
the Devil's Staircase, yes.
Yes, it's going up. No, I have don't make no generalization to going down.
No, it was just sometimes when one has been immersed in your music, to speak in very bald terms, it's actually very sad, and one sometimes wants to know if there's something you can point to in this heightened expressivity and...
I don't think that real life, what you experience, and I experience a lot of very bad things in the Nazi time and communist dictatorship also, I would not put in connection with the music. There were very sad people like Pergolesi writing very light, optimistic music, and I don't think that Mozart was really sad.
No.
He was a hippoman player, and he wrote some pieces of the deepest melancholy, like the G minor string quintet or the C minor piano concerto. No, I wouldn't. I even wouldn't dare to combine the descending Pasacalla bass, which is a Baroque tradition, maybe Spanish, we don't know, and this association of chromatic downwards, which sorrow. I don't think in this kind of... Was it Matterson or who developed this kind of...
Affect
theory.
Yes.
It's one of the theories. Stravinsky wrote that there is no expression in music, but still in his music is a lot of expression, malgré lui. We don't go in these speculations.
Can you just say a little about L'Escalier du Diable and the Infinite Column? That'd be lovely to have a little bit about those two studies at the end of the second book.
You ask me something and I give another answer, like a rabbi. It's not a... you have to see this. Stephen, wrote this wonderful thing that if you listen, not the separated etudes, but in the right order of the first and second book, you have a big construction. Every etude is a building, and together they make larger buildings. Wait, there will be a third book, if I can finish it. Have 2.5 studies.
2.5 now?
Yeah. The first is on the record, the 15th.
Yes, white on white.
Just non-tonal tonality, whatever. It was performed, the next one, by the wife of Emar, Irina Kateva, 10 days ago.
That's number 16?
Number 16, and I just writing number 17, which is a canon. So I cannot.
We could have a third book. Lovely.
It's not read. No, these are 3. So wait for the third book. And there are certain ideas which I don't answer you about Escalier du Diable and about Colonna Infinita. I answer you about the whole conception, which was not then there at the beginning. I just began to write 3 pieces for Boulez. And for me, because I was interested in piano, and it was the time where I had time to, not to practice, but I play a lot prima vista. Not since I write the etudes, I have no time. I stopped piano playing for myself. I'm not good enough to play for public. And I regularly played every day, half an hour to an hour piano since mid-80s, since 85. Then I began to write these etudes, had no time more for everything. So this is just making jokes. The problems or the focus of the interest during the composition of these cycles, which turned out to be cycles when I write them. For instance, the fact that the first book has 6, just after the 6th, because it was a very representative piece, this Autumn à Varsovie.
The last piece in book 1, yes.
Yes, with complex polyrhythm and polytempi, having one pianist playing same time 3 different speeds, even 4 illusion. This was a clear closed form. I'm not interested in open form. I'm interested in closed form and in architecture, also in real architecture, high-level architecture. And then entering the second book, suddenly there are 8. I don't know why, because I had to make a big building and I didn't write them in the order. So the last should be Escalier du Diable. And then I found I have to write one which comes after the last, and this is the Brancusi or Brancusi allusion of the infinite
column.
Oh, by the way, I got one of this hundreds of thesis dissertation on my music. I got one who examination of the real column of I say Brancusi because Brancusi is not known in the.
This is in Romania somewhere?
It's in Târgu Jiu in Romania. I never was there. I saw photos, but he had some small. This is big, 35 meters. I never saw it, and he did in several, executions, smaller ones, with the thinking it's infinite, but of course it's not infinite, but it gives the idea of being infinite, asymptotical to infinite, wherever infinite it is. It can be very close or very far away. This is another very deep mathematical problem, because we can find 0, but we cannot find infinity. We can find higher and higher numbers.
Yes.
We don't go in number theory. I saw photos of it. When I wrote this etude, where it's always going up, it was in Escalier du Diable, and then it was not on the basis of Brancusi. It was only afterwards, when I began to write it, I realized it has certain analogies of the thinking of Brancusi. I have to say Brâncuș, which is Romanian origin. And this was an article, a study. I should know the name, but I read a lot in last time. It was in the last half year. I was so amazed. He gave the proportions 16.5 units in the Brancusi column in Târgu Jiu, which I know from photo, finding the same proportions in my etude, 16.5 cycles. You know how you play with 2 hands, going a certain chords, certain successions, which are like in a Chopin, like in the last C minor.
Etude from Book 2?
Yeah, Opus 25,
Yes.
number 12. And always the whole piano, something which I deeply love. Also the first one, Opus 10, number 1,
Yes.
the C major has the same idea. And there the movement goes up and down all the time, waves, you know. And I had the idea, it's more a movement idea, technical, piano technical idea. I go up with both hands, playing a certain kind of figuration which fits a certain harmony. And when I am with the right hand on the top of the piano, I go with the right hand in crossing the left hand, which is a technique very well known from Scarlatti, but on this harpsichord were 2 manuals, so it was simple. You can do it on piano. Mozart did it a lot of time, and so it's a virtuoso idea. So I begin now in the right hand, lower than the left hand. After a while, when I'm in the middle of the keyboard, I go with the left again. So I begin the same, which is always different, a lot of times. This fellow found it 16 and a half, exactly like in Brancusi. Whether it's true or not, I have no idea. And I never... No, after I saw the picture, it's true. I don't know whether it's true in my study, because I don't know from where you count it. So it's a very shaky idea. It's musicologist idea. But the idea of these 2 studies, which was one, going all the time up, comes from a different piece which I wrote before, which is always going down. It's vertige, the chromatic scale, the canons in chromatic scales, irregular canons, but always chromatic scale in different harmonic combination in the 2 hands, which always go down.
Chasing each other, yes.
Yeah, and the idea comes from acoustics, the Roger Shepard infinite scale. It comes from visual art, Moritz Escher, infinitely, and based on the Penrose, not the today Penrose, but the father of the I think he's in Cambridge. I never met him, but I have a lot of admiration for him. But there was the father Penrose, if I am not mistaken, who drew first time this endless up or down going staircase based on the optical trick representing on 2-dimension plane a 3-dimensional object. And this gave to Escher these wonderful ideas of his false perspectives, having a feedback to the younger Penrose, who made this pattern of dividing a surface in irregular pentagons and hexagons, which is wonderful geometric construction. An idea which came from the Escher's infinity I go very much in specialties. Escher was not a mathematician. Escher's mathematics is like my mathematics. I use it, but not deliberately. There's a wonderful book from a Dutch mathematician, Bruno Ernst, who knew Escher and discussed with him. And Escher was very amazed that he realized certain 2-dimensional projections of 3-dimensional projections of 4-dimensional hyperbolic. This picture, the gallery, the art gallery.
Yes.
Well, it's a recursive structure. In the middle, it's a signature of Escher. You don't look there. It's a hyperbolic. It's a projection. With this we have to go in projective geometry and a lot of... Escher was not a mathematician. He was a craftsman. I feel very close to his thinking, not to his aesthetics. My aesthetics I admire more really great art. And this was a kind of high-level crafts and art. Me too, maybe also. So, Escalier du Diable is a construction going always upwards. And then Columna Infinite is kind of short recapitulation with the special techniques of hand crossing. And based on the ever-descending idea, polyphonic chromatic canons in Vertige, based on Roger Shepard. We never met, but he is also at Stanford University where I was. But in fact, I had no knowledge about him. I am became very good friend during 70s with Jean-Claude Risset, who is in Marseille, and he produced computer simulations of ever falling. It's very, very famous now. So it's the same idea. I transposed it on the solo piano in Vertige. So this is the genetic, how you go from somewhere, you arrive somewhere else, and you don't know how you did it.
I have one tiny question. When I was listening to Der Zauberlehrling and thinking, now, what is this? Oh, I think it must be the German for Sorcerer's Apprentice. Am I right?
Of course. This is the Goethe poem, but only the title. Oh, don't think that I thought on this poem. But it's not program music. Afterwards, like Debussy gave the preludes, in what's it called?
Gave it the title afterwards, says Debussy.
Yes, afterwards with points and pios. Some poetic connotations. Zauberlehrling is all a connotation because it's a very fast movement, and then dividing in two, dividing in four, and so on, bifurcation. It's also an idea from this chaos geometry and Feigenbaum and so on, and but not using it, sorry. This piece, afterwards I gave the name of Zauberlehrling because in the Goethe poem there are, two spirits and then more and more and more, and you cannot rid of them. And the idea of my piano etude is totally far-fetched, something else. There are certain xylophone pieces from Malawi, which I heard in the collection of Gerhard Kubik, who lives partly in Malawi. Very, very complex xylophone music. And my idea was to have a similar, not the same music, it's not folklore, similar ideas from the xylophone put on the piano. And so it's very difficult to follow this because I cannot describe it.
Do jazz pianists interest you? I think
yes,
they do.
Yes. The good ones. I think I'm a deep, deep love for a not good pianist, for two not good pianists. Neither Duke Ellington was a great pianist, nor Thelonious Monk, but as musicians, they are the most wonderful. So, of course, I'm deeply loving jazz. Deeply loving also the virtuoso people like Art, how do you pronounce it? Tatum? The blind genius. Oh, the other blind genius, Lenny Tristano, but this is different, not high technique. But Art Tatum. And then not a blind, but a seeing pianist, Oscar Patterson, with the super speed. And this whole world of bebop and so on and so on and so on. Not only the piano, also in the Gillespie variation and so on and so on. And Charlie Parker and all these things. But coming back to piano, there are two good pianists which I never met, but make a lot of kitsch, but wonderful pianist, Herbie Hancock, and what's the name of the white pianist? Very well known. Chick Corea.
Chick Corea, yes.
Chick Corea. They, in one record, they played together. Half composed, half improvised, as jazz always. And they're amazingly polyrhythmic combinations of the two pianos. This was also a strong influence on me. So I would dream Chick Corea and Herbie Hancock playing my pieces for two pianos, but I think it's no improvisation in it. But my really favorite jazz pianist is Bill Evans, who is the poet, close to Michelangelo and to Mare yes, the culture, and Pierre-Laurent Aimard, culture of sound on piano, the touch. I would be an excellent pianist if I would have been allowed to. We had no instrument.
Started a bit early than you did, yes.
I started with 14. If I would start with 8 or earlier, I would today be I think a good pianist. I don't know.
That's wonderful. I think we should stop there. I'm sorry, time has gone on and you must be exhausted.
You have all questions?
I don't know what I've got. I think this is a good moment to stop and to ask Alan what he thinks we should do. We've gone over all sorts of things, and then never mind that it hasn't come out in exactly the order of the programs. We can sort all that out